Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and it's been ages since I've done a case review on the channel. People keep sending me messages actually saying, can you review this case, can you review this case, can you review this case? Please remember, this is the video channel that is a part of the main website, and I have other writers and reviewers that do written reviews on the main website. I would say 99% of the times people ask me if I can do this and the product's been out about 3 or 4 weeks already, then generally one of the other members of the team has done it. The other case reviewer that I've got is G-Dubs, and he does most of the cases that we, like the main cases that don't get done here, we do on the main website over there, because obviously I've not got time to do a video of everything when I've got, cases, motherboards, RAM, coolers, monitors, flipping power supplies, just loads and loads of stuff to do. So we've got other members of the team that just do the website stuff, and then the reviews that I do here, I also do a section on the website for it as well. So it's very there's a lot kind of going on, but you'll only ever see me doing videos at the moment. But anyway, so what we need to do is today's review is on the Fractal Arc XL, and it's the second version of it, because we had the Arc Midi and then we had the Arc Midi V2, so we've essentially got the Arc XL V2, and they've done this very different to the last one, as I'll show you in a minute. It's very much more like the Arc Midi V2 but a bit bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you in and we'll go through this in the normal kind of case style layout. I will say from the very get-go, I've got no cooler in this at the moment because the cooler is now hanging off the 2011 board from when I did the 4960 review, because this has been here for a little while and it's something that's been dragging on where I've been ill. But we're doing the video today, and that's a courier. So yeah, I'm going to stop the camera and go and answer the door, and we'll be back to have a look at this in a sec. Okay, so just a quick cut in, and it will make sense to you when you get further in the video. I forgot to mention this case has been designed for XL-ATX motherboards. Now, the Rampage 4 Extreme, they say, is an E-ATX motherboard, which means it's a bit fatter. But this is designed for XL-ATX motherboards, which means they're much longer. This has actually got 9 PCI slots or expansion slots, or whatever you want to call them, at the back. Now, when I got further into the video, I remembered I hadn't mentioned that yet, so I'm kind of going back in time and putting it in before it's happened. So yeah, kind of a bit Marty McFly. Anyway, let's move on with the next bit. Okay then, so as has become a tradition with our case reviews, although I've not done one for a while, so it's taken me a little while to actually bloody remember it, we'll start at the top and work our way down and around. Now, start with the USBs. We've got 2 USB 2s, 2 USB 3s, internal header on that, although to be fair, it's just a standard now. We don't really need to worry about external headers and stuff. Reset switch, we've got a power switch there with an LED light. Obviously you can wire that up for whatever LED that you want. Headphone, microphone, and then we do have a fan controller over here, and it's 12 volt, 7 volt, 5 volt, 3 settings that you can flick between, and there's 3 fan headers on the inside for it. We won't talk about this massive bit of mesh yet because I want to kind of move down first. So what I'm going to do, I should have undone the microphone. The reason why we've kind of just slid it down is because as I move round and you can see the kind of light moving, you can see the grain on the front panel, and you can kind of, I'm hoping you can see what I mean. As I'm moving about, you can see the grain kind of appearing and disappearing. Now the front panel is plastic. On the Arc, on the Arc Midi, where it's so small and compact, and it was quite aggressively priced as well, I didn't really kind of mind too much. This, I'm still kind of making my mind up whether I like it or not. And by like it, I mean I don't know whether I think the grain in it, trying to make it look like aluminium, actually makes it cheaper, and they should have just gone with plain plastic like they have on the roof, because on the roof panel, which I'll show you in a minute, it's smooth, and I quite like that, and I think it might have been better if they'd just done it with smooth plastic. It's nothing against having plastic on there, because obviously there's plastic on a lot of the cases nowadays. I'm not entirely sure whether I like that grain to it. It just looks like cheap black ash furniture from the 80s. But anyway, So we've done that. If we kind of scan down a little bit, we can see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 optical bays. But then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move the camera back, and then we can see the mesh panel on the front. And there's 2 clips, and then you can remove it. And there is foam on the other side for dust filtering, and then there's a 140mm fan in the front, and you can add another one as well. Something that I will show you in more detail in a minute is you can fit 120mm fans in there as well, and yes, the spacing is right for radiators. But what we will do is I'm just going to plonk this back on, clip it in place, and then I'm actually going to stop the camera and move the case rather than making you all feel seasick. Okay, so we flipped round to the back where we're going to talk about the mesh area, because there are 2 screws for the mesh area. One thing I will say is this may sound like a really strange thing to bring up, but the screws for this roof panel are different to the side panels. So if you do end up taking it all apart to build it, make sure you keep these screws different, because they're not the same as these ones, and the threads on this one for the roof are slightly longer. But as I've just shown you, you can just give it a bit of a pull, and you can get hold of this whole mesh panel and then remove it. And then we bring it out. There is dust filtering in there as well, but to be fair, unless you're not running fans in this, if you've got any, I always have my roof fans on exhaust. And people say, oh, but you can suck cool air in from the outside. And it's like, yes, you can do, but heat rises. And to be fair, I always have my roof fans on exhaust if they're in there. If you're not going to have fans in there, then you can leave this mesh in there to stop any dust settling and then falling in your case. But if you're going to have any fans in the roof at all, I would at very least, cut out the section of foam where your fan's going to be, so that you can just get a clear airflow and it's not being restricted. And now what I do need to do is I'm going to move the case again, but we need to have a side-on look at this, just so that I can talk to you about the fan layout and some options within the roof. But I just wanted to show you the screws at the back and how it was removed more clearly than I could show you from the side. So I'm just going to move the camera again. Okay then peeps, so we have got this section in the roof. We've got that extra section over there just out of shot, but you get the idea that we can just see the edge of it. Now, it does get a little bit complicated. Now you can fit 200mm fans in the roof if you want. It comes with a 140 fitted, set up as exhaust, and you can see that the way the fan is, that it is offset, so it's sat further away from the motherboard. And you can put, you've got the 140, but it does also have mounts. That's where you can put 120, and then there's another mount there, so you can put another 120. So you can put a 240mm rad in this, and it'd be offset away from the motherboard exactly the same way that the Arc Midi was. So you can have a big fat radiator, and I'll show you the sizes on the inside, but you can definitely fit a fat, and by that I mean 60mm thick 240 in this. And when I did the Arc, I had a 240 in there in push-pull with a 60mm rad anyway. But something and you can fit offset 240 and 280 radiators in the top, because obviously they both sat over. The only thing is, if you run a 280mm radiator, it's 140mm fans, it does blatantly sit, if we show you, kind of that much, like 20mm closer to the motherboard. So you do, when it starts to hang over the motherboard, you are going to have a lot less room to be able to play with. Now they have got the mounts, just to show you. That's where the 120 would go. Then you can move this over here, and there's another 120, and if we move this over here, that's another 120. So you can actually fit a 360 radiator in the roof, and the spacings are right. The problem is this isn't offset, and as I'll show you in a minute when we get inside, there's not enough room above the motherboard to have a decent thickness radiator in there. You can only run a skinny rad. But I need to cover this in more detail when we get to the inside bit, so I can show you and get the tape measure out and show you a rad in there as well. But I just wanted to show you the mesh first, so that you can see the difference between, that's where the 360mm rad would sit, And then just to show you how much difference it is, that's where the 240mm radiator would sit. It's much more offset. So just to show you again, that's where it would be for the offset. And then you're looking, where's the mount gone? There we go. It's like 40mm difference. Now that's a lot of clearance when you're hanging stuff near a motherboard. But yeah, I do want to talk to you about radiators and stuff in more detail when we get inside, and I can show you a better look. But anyway, now it's time for me to move the bloody camera again. Okay then, so we're now round the back. Now at the top you can see we've got this large kind of ventilated area, and that will be just for kind of a natural progression of any warm air to be able to ventilate out. But once you've got radiator fans and stuff in there, it's not really going to be too much of a problem. Also, with big open areas of mesh like this, and down here, and pretty much any areas in the case that have not got an active fan on them, something to remember is positive air pressure. You want more fans blowing in than you've really got blowing out, because then any little gaps or bits of mesh or anything like this, the extra positive pressure will get pushed out of here, and it can actually help reduce dust. It does make me laugh when you see people with, like, I don't know, lots more fans blowing out than they have in, and they think it's going to make their rig run cooler. You do, to a point, want slightly balanced airflow, but just with slightly more positive. So maybe like one fan blowing in more, for argument's sake, just so that it's ever so slightly more positive. But anyway, off topic. Around the back, there's a 140mm Fractal fan fitted, but you have got the mounts there for a 120, should you wish. This is the first glimpse that we get of the white detailing that you'll find inside. You've got white PCI slots there, and you've also got white hard drive cages. Down the bottom you've got your power supply. Now I always end up saying this because people say, you know, they shouldn't have your power supply which way round to go. The power supply, the fan blows in to the power supply, so the back of this is always the exhaust. Cooler Master recently put a picture up and it was completely the wrong way round, and fans always blow at the components. Now some people have it sucking air from underneath. And just because I'm trying to do it on camera, I now can't get this. Hang on, there we go. It's got little tabs on it and I couldn't get my hands on it. Now there is a dust filter at the bottom if you were to run your fat with it blowing in, but I always have mine the other way round. It doesn't make any difference to the performance of the power supply or anything like that, whether you have it, you know, which way round you have it blowing. And when it comes down to like case pressure and stuff, again, it doesn't really matter that much. The fan doesn't spin enough unless you've either A, got an old shit one, or B, you're really running your power supply at its absolute limits. If you've got a decent power supply and you're not running it overrated or, you know, ragging the arse out of it, then your power supply will be fine. It shouldn't really come into any of your calculations for airflow, really. Because even Orca, with only an 860 power supply in there, that fan hardly ever bloody spins where it's semi-passive. So again, you buy decent bits. These are things that you don't really need to worry about, and you kind of stop overthinking it. But anyway, we've covered the back now. What I'm going to do is move the case again, and we can have a look at the behind the motherboard tray. Okie dokie, so we're round to the rear section of the case. Now there's something I do want to zoom you in on pretty much straight away, just so that I can show you. Now if you have a look there, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in and touch it. You can see that there's a distinct plate there. Now generally with motherboard trays you'd be able to put cables down in that section, but you can't with this. And it's one of the few times I've ever come across it, and it is a bit of a pain in the arse for cabling. Now round the back, two things that we need to point out straight away is here and here there are solid state drive mounts that you can hide them round the back of the case. When we get on the inside we'll talk about that a little bit more, but there's two screws on each, so you can take it off completely, mount your solid state drive and then bang it on. One thing, if you've got 90 degree SATA cables, you may find it a little bit different trying to loop them in, but you'll just have to have a play with that, and that will really depend on your power supply. I've not particularly tried to keep this tidy, A time, B, I like to kind of make it as difficult as possible to be able to put cables in, because not everyone is anally retentive and, you know, wants everything really, you know, tidily hidden. So it just gives me a good idea whether people are going to have a pain in the arse with it, or whether it's actually going to be, you know, relatively easy for a lot of people. And this one, it's average is the best way I'm going to put it. For cabling, it's average. There's plenty of anchor points if you do want to make it tidy. You've actually got a grommet here, which is quite a good point. This is a really nice place for audio cables, for front panel audio and stuff like that, should you actually want to connect it rather than having to drag them all over the place. There is plenty of anchor cables. Everything's grommeted, nice large area at the bottom, 3 up the sides, and then we've got 2 at the top as well. So there's a decent amount of, you know, ways that you can put stuff through, but there's not a massive amount of room back here. And because of that little bit at the bottom as well, yeah, there's not it's an average amount of room. I need to stop trying to make it sound better, but it's an average amount of room. If you were to have your loads of hard drives and stuff in here, there's better room to be able to get all your SATA cables and your SATA power cables in. But as far as, like, you know, routing and stuff, like the fact that we've got the 24 pin over the cables for the rest of the case did make things kind of difficult. I would have had to have gone, you know, right the way around here and up with it if I was going to try and make it easy, and I would have had to start using zip ties and stuff like that. But again, so it's not bad for cable routing, but it's not going to, you will have to put a little bit of effort in there. There is a total from the back of the motherboard tray out 30 millimeters, because the back of the door has it's difficult to explain. The door will go right in, but then your cables can kind of hang out here a little bit more. But if you go to where the actual door mounts on, there's only 15 mil. So you do get the 30, but it does. The cables do sit out into the actual door part itself, because it's got like, it's kind of like 2 stage really. If you have a look, there's the 15 where the edge of the step is, and then you've got another 15 mil, you know, out towards the edge of the door. So 30 bit is good, but it does mean that when you put the cables on, you do have to kind of push and hold the door to be able to put the backs in. But again, I'm going to move the case, and then we can look at the other side, and then while we're doing that, I will take the side panel off and we can have a look inside as well. Okay then peeps, so we are on, I need to move it this way a little bit now I've looked at the camera. Oh no, it's the other way. There we go. Right, so we are on to the side panel with the window. Again, it's the same design window that we've seen on the Midi, just a little bit bigger really, which is probably something that you're going to hear me say a lot. It's smoked as well, and I do quite like it. I'm not sure whether it's going to show up in the actual, in the camera, but you can just see through to, well, for my eyes anyway, I can see everything in the case fine, just slightly dark, but it does, the yellow bits on the M-Power Max and the Lightning and the RAM, and it is accentuating that, and you can see that kind of standing out a little bit. I would say with these smoke windows, if you can either have it so it's just kind of subtle and sleek and stealthy, but if you were to bang some white LEDs in this to pick out the yellow again, I would say use white LEDs as well. It will help highlight those little bits of colour in there, and it should work really, really well as well. I've tried it really basically by just literally laying a line of LEDs at the bottom of the case, and it did look really nice. But if we take the door off, the door it's not a slide-on door or anything like that. You literally just latch it at the front, and then it comes off, and that's it. You get it on that little step, you lock it in at the front, you know, you get it located, and then you just push it closed and stick your screws in. That's why the cables on the other side can become a little bit of a mission to get the door on. Now when we get it in there, I said to you earlier on, I've not got the heat sink in here now, because I used the H100i in the 4960X review, which I was working on this beforehand, and then the CPU arrived and didn't have very long. And anyway, long story short, that's why there's no heat sink in this. But I did test it and this kit actually with the H100i, because I've been playing around. This is actually a 4670K that I've got in here, the i5, and I've been playing around with it. Now, I'm not sure whether you'll be able to see it or not, but can you spot the solid state drive? I'm kind of looking at the camera to to see whether you can or not. I will show you in a minute. But we've obviously got the M-Power Max, we've got the Kingston Navi memory, the GTX 780 Lightning, love it. I actually really like the power supply that we've got on this, and I'll give you a look at this in a minute anyway. But you can see the layout in here, and essentially we've got, I'm going to need my screwdriver, I'm pretty sure of it. We've got the, I'll just walk in front and grab my screwdriver, just casually. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hard drive cages, and the hard drive cages, they are removable and movable as well, because you can take the front one out, and it literally does just slide out that easy. And that's why I wanted to do it on camera, is the fact it is just a case of boom, it's in there. And if you want to take it out, say for example you're going to put a couple of hard drives in the bottom and you want some extra airflow, you can take that out, and then suddenly that front fan is just blowing straight at your graphics card, and you've got a nice bit of airflow there. Also, I am going to be taking this out because this bottom one can still be removed. There's 4 screws in the bottom, but it can be moved over and mounted closer to the power supply. One thing that I will say though is if you've got big power supplies, that high wattage power supplies that are bigger than this, this is 160mm, but if you've got a big power supply, you will struggle to move this over. But if you've got an industry standard one, which is 160mm length, the cables will be a bit tight, especially if you run it with the fan showing up like I do, because I always have mine like this. But you can move it over closer to here, and you'll be wondering to yourself, why would I want to do that, Tom? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out altogether, and then I will show you why you may want to move the old baby over a bit. Okay then, peeps. So the we've taken this whole section out, which was basically this. You can then fit it with a little bit of a push in here if you want. Something that I did notice when I was trying to do it though is my motherboard headers were getting in the way. Now they only get in the way because of the plastic bit on the top, which is why I was showing you. You can take these 4 screws out and take this plastic bit off the top. Then it doesn't foul the motherboard. So if you're going to move it across, just remember to take that off and you'll be fine. Now what we're going to do is we need to remember there's a set of fans in the front. Now good maths, just for everyone that's thinking, oh, I'm going to run a 60mm radiator, all you need to ever remember is that however thick your radiator plus a set of fans. Now if you're running a radiator, fans are 25mm. People say, oh, I can use skinny fans. And to be fair, you can get thinner fans, but they're fucking useless on radiators. And it's pointless. You would be better off running a better fan on a slightly thinner radiator for the difference that it makes. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure to the edge of our graphics card here to see how much room that we've got. Now we have in total fucking loads of room. There's like 180mm in there. So even if you wanted to put a 240mm 80mm thick radiator in it and a set of fans, that's only 105mm. So we'll say 111. There we go. So we've got 110mm. Now that I've sorted my arsey wanky maths out, it's to the edge of the tape measure. That is how much distance an 80mm thick radiator and another set of fans will make, because the other set of fans are outside. So there's ample room here for airflow and other stuff. It wouldn't look too cramped. And just to show you, this is a 60mm thick radiator. It's actually an XSPC RX240. If you put it in there and line it up with where the 120s will be, it's pretty cool because you can have the end tank at the top where the bulbs are. This helps with bleeding, because the air in the rads will come to the top and it will get pushed around the rest of the loop. So that's there, and even if we had a second set of fans, it's not even going to be to the end of the optical bay here. So there's ample room in there to get a nice thick 240mm radiator. Bearing in mind, if it is thicker, that can mean more cooling, but for me, I normally run the thicker rads on push-pull, but with lower RPM fans, so quiet fans. But what we need to do now is I'm going to rejig again so that I can show you up into the roof and show you some distances up in the roof. Right then, that's where I wedged the solid state drive, just so that it was kind of in the case, and when you are sat next to it you can see it through the window and everything quite nicely as well. It is just kind of the roof holds it in place against the top of the motherboard. It works fine, lovely. Anyway, so that's where I hid it, just so that there was more yellow inside. That's obviously a 140mm fan in the roof, but it is the normal 25mm thickness that we'd use if we were going to run a 360 rad up there. A 360, if we were going to run a radiator up there. Now the distance between the fan and the top of the motherboard is, you're looking at about 45mm between the fan and the top of the motherboard. Now if you're going to run the offset radiator, so the 240 over here, you can hang right in front of the rest of the case. It does obscure the top of the RAM and stuff, but you can run a much thicker radiator up there. You can run a 60mm thick radiator at 240 in push-pull, and as long as you've not got massive memory, you won't run into any issues up here at all. The problem comes if you want to run a 360, because even though this is meant to be a big case, you've only got that 45mm. And if I get this 360 in up here, it's actually an XSPC AX 360. If I hold it in place, you can see that we are literally right up on the limits. Now this is a 40mm thick radiator, and to be fair, you know, 40mm would be probably as far as I would go. If you go 45, then you could be looking at problems with your 8-pin power. Because as you can see, we've got our 8-pin power there, and it's right at the top of the motherboard tray, and you may end up having to kind of really, you know, skew your cable round and everything. I've actually put it in behind here because I could get a better angle with it behind the motherboard than up this way. So if you're going to run a 360 radiator in this, you're looking at a 30mm thick or radiator, or that XSPC that we've just looked at is the AX 360. That's a 40mm thick radiator, and I really wouldn't advise you to go any thicker than that. And the reason why I say this is because what I do is I give you the distance from the very top of the motherboard upwards, because there's so many times where an 8-pin power connector might get in the way, or a heatsink might get in the way. Your motherboard, you may be really lucky and be able to get a thicker one in, but I give you the option that's going to be, you know, acceptable for everyone. Just to kind of, because I always end up getting messages from people going, oh, well, I've got one of those cases and I've put a so-and-so thick radiator in it. And it's because their motherboard is better suited to that case. I can't cover everything. I have to kind of give it the idiot-proof option. So with this, I would be comfortable to say a maximum of 40mm thick. Fractal actually say a skinny radiator, which is 30mm thick, is the maximum. Well, I will give you that extra 10mm, and you can get the AX 360 in there if you want. It does mean that you could get an AX 360 in the roof, and you could easily put the RX 240 in the front. The RX 240, then that would mean that you could run it in push-pull, and you'd have epic, you know, room and everything in there. So yeah, it does get a little bit confusing with the radiators. I'm actually a little bit disappointed because you're not really that far off with the rads being able to run a 60mm thick. Now, just to kind of point something out while we're here, it's an XL-ATX board. And I forgot to cover that before, and it's actually the main point of the case, so I need my arse kicking. If we have a look, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 PCI Express slots. It's for really long boards. But then we've got this big gap here between the power supply and the bottom 9-pin. Now, if you were going to have all of these, you know, if you did have a graphics card down here, then fair enough, you'd want this gap. But I'd be very doubtful that, you know, if anyone's ever going to have a graphics card actually in this slot. So we've actually got enough room here that we could add, if we added that room into the roof, we'd be able to get a 60mm thick radiator in. But just to add insult to injury, if we have a look at the bottom of the case, you can see that we've also got a massive gap between the floor and the power supply, and it's 20mm exactly away from the floor. Now, if you're going to run your power supply sucking air out from the floor, you don't really need that gap because you're going to have your fan sucking straight through the mesh. It's not going to matter. You can put your power supply right on the floor and it wouldn't matter. If you're running it my way round, again, it's not going to matter either. So if they'd moved that power supply 20, you know, just taken these mounts away and run it so that the power supply was designed to sit on the floor, then you could have your 60mm thick radiator in the roof. Now let's put this into context, because I want to be quite specific about this. If you go 60mm thick radiator in the roof, that means you can fit pretty much every 360mm water cooling radiator out there from all the different brands up in the roof, because it's only really the monster radiators that go thicker. And if you want to run a 30mm thick you can, 45mm thick you can, 50mm thick you can, 60mm thick you can, and let's put it into context, peeps. 80% of the radiators that are available out there are what I would call double thickness 60mm thick rads. So if they'd moved that power supply down a little bit, just down a little bit, then we would have had so many more options of radiators to be able to fit in the roof. And considering this case is being marketed for massive motherboards, which are expensive, which obviously means more graphics cards, which are expensive, you'd think that they would have added a little bit more room in the roof, so those water coolers amongst us could get, well, essentially we wouldn't be limited by our radiator choices. And I just think that, from a personal, yeah, that stuff falling over. From a personal point of view, as you know, being someone that likes to water cool and likes to see options for people, I think this is a bit of an oversight from Fractal, and it's kind of, I think they've missed a trick here really, but we're kind of breaking into the conclusion now, so we need to move on. But yeah, I should have mentioned before that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 PCI Express slots at the back. Again, I'm a little bit rusty with this, where I've not really made one for a while, so I do apologise. I will edit a bit into the beginning now, so I don't feel so bad. Right, conclusion. And this was, I've got to admit, and I've been swearing a lot in these videos since I come out of hospital, so I'm going to blame it on all the medication that I had. Maybe it's actually flushed my brain away and it's like the real me that's back. Or maybe it's all the medications in my head and it's made me a bit nuts. But it's been a complete head fuck for me, this, because I kept latching on to the radiator problem in the roof, because I found all the other places where they could have got the room and not changed the main design of the case. They didn't have to make it any bigger. They just had to like move the power supply a bit, or move the motherboard down a bit, and it wouldn't have made any it wouldn't have made any difference. It's literally just a slight layout change on the back, and we could have got 60mm thick rads. But the problem was I was like smash on. I was like, I'm going to mark it down for that. So I'm going to go with this. Now I found out that it's going to be £104.95, and from the point of me making this video, it's going to be in the UK in like retail stores in about 5 weeks. It's essentially on a boat at the moment coming over. This is an early sample that they sent me. I've actually had this case. It's before I was ill. And it's like an early tooling sample, although the retail samples are going to be the same as this. So they've not changed any of the layout or anything. But the award that I'm going to give it, and I need to kind of explain why, I am going to give it the Gold Award. Now, the reason why I've not marked it down for that radiator thing, yes, I think that's an oversight. I do think that's an oversight. And to be fair, if they'd have kind of changed that a little bit, I probably wouldn't have noticed, but it's one of those things that I've seen it. I know that it's, you know, it's there in the version that you guys are going to be buying, and I think it's one of those ones where I'm like, if you'd have changed it, it would have made it that so much better. So I've seen like the bad, yeah. So I wish they'd, you know, allowed room for that 60mm rad in the roof. I know they couldn't have offset it because of all these bays, and I've had so many emails from Fractal about their team telling me the way they designed it. But I'll be completely honest with you now about the way I feel that team has designed this case. They've essentially got the Arc Midi V2, which was epic because of the offset rad and the fact it was compact and everything. And it's the way I feel. All they've done is added more slots in. That's all they've done. They've made it a bit bigger. They've had a bit more mesh at the top, and that was it. If you'd have had an enthusiast on that design team or the product development team, whoever it was that was into water cooling, no fucking doubt in my mind that gap at the top for radiators would have been bigger. And this is one of the problems I think with a lot of the case manufacturers out there now. They don't have enough people that actually fucking use this shit in the first place on those design teams, and they go to like whatever groups they call them, like where they send bits out to people, and it like they're, you know, voicing groups or whatever it is. I can never remember what it's called. And they send it out to these people, and they don't actually know whether they, do you know what I mean? They're taking advice from people about water cooling and cooling, and they don't actually know whether they fucking use it or not. And it just frustrates me that a company as big as Fractal can get this close, and then essentially they're making excuses about the radiator. They think that a 30mm thick radiator in the roof is big enough. It basically allowed you enough room in the roof for a thickness radiator the same as a H100i. And they've not really allowed you anything else. And they keep saying, oh, you can put a really thick 240 in the front, and that's all well and good. But just a few extra millimetres on the roof and you could have got a full-size radiator in. I hammered Cooler Master for it when you had that wanky, skinny radiator that you could put in the Cosmos 2. You're going to get the same from me with this, because at this price point, if they had had a 60mm thick radiator in the roof and a 240mm radiator in the front, you could have both had 60mm. It would be a water cooler's dream case. And the bit that really confuses me is, because of this is designed for XL-ATX boards, there's no cheap XL-ATX boards out there. You've either got an old one, or if you're buying a new one, you're buying an expensive motherboard. XL-ATX motherboards also mean multiple graphics cards. That's a big spend again as well. So when you're kind of talking into all these bits, it's like, you've got a cheap case, you know, very well priced case. It's quite aggressively priced. For me, you know, being limited on radiator choices may make me spend that little bit more and go with another brand. And the problem is I know on the 23rd of this month, there is a case that's £15 more than this, but has 60mm support in the roof, 80mm support in the front, massive window, does everything that this does, but they actually have enthusiasts on that design team. So, you know, they've covered all these angles, and I think really what Fractal have done is they've made a case for massive motherboards, which is such a tiny area of the market. But then just to narrow their product, just to narrow their customer base down even more, they've then limited the radiator choice that you can put in the roof as well. So now many of you are thinking, Tom, you've just spent however long, 3 minutes, saying that there's areas in this case that you don't like, but you've given it a gold award. So why the fuck have you given it a gold award? And I will try to explain. If the radiator in the roof doesn't bother you, because let's face it, not everyone's going to put one in there, and you've got an XL-ATX motherboard, which is, to be fair, what this case is fucking designed for anyway, or even if you've got a normal ATX board, it's still a really good case, and it is only 105 quid. And not everyone wants to buy a Cooler Master or a Corsair case. A lot of people do like the Fractal stuff. I like the Fractal stuff. My home server's still in an R3. They make wicked stuff. I love the Arc V2 MIDI. If you want to buy a MIDI tower and you want to put water cooling in it, I still say that's one of the, you know, the best kind of smaller ATX cases out there because of that offset, and it's brilliant. So if you look at this for what it is, if you want to put H100i in the roof, bang on, there's plenty of room for it. There's plenty of room to get it up there, to the point where you could probably even, with some motherboards, maybe even be able to squeeze in a second set of fans in push-pull if you were lucky. But you never really know till you started to fit it in there and you could have a look. You can get those bigger boards in there should you want to. You can fit multiple graphics cards in. You can move the hard drive trays around. You can remove them all together. If you do remove them all together and you're only running solid state drives, a lot of us do nowadays, if you're not downloading loads of porn and it's just a game or a LAN rig, you've got the solid state drives mounted round the back. So you could have them in RAID, you could have it in, one is storage and one is your OS. There's plenty of room there. There is a dust filter for the fan. It is heavy because it's steel, but it's really sturdy. There's braces at the front and the back and another one over on this side. So it doesn't twist. When you take all these hard drive cases out, it doesn't twist. So there's a dust filter in, there's grommets, it's all black, it's well made, it doesn't feel cheap. The only thing that I think feels cheap on it is the front panel, and I do think that with this case, definitely over the Arc Midi. I liked it on the Arc Midi, but this, it doesn't work. There's just too much of it. I think this plastic should have just been plain like it is on the roof. The roof plastic looks really nice. It's cool. They should have done that on the front. So for 105 quid, it does deliver a lot. It does tick a lot of boxes, and it will do what you want it to, as long as you don't want to put a 60mm thick radiator in the roof. That's my only gripe, and the reason why I gave it so much shit, and I want to give it shit, is because if I don't say this stuff, when they do the next one, they won't make it any bigger, or they won't move stuff around or anything. So I'm now getting on my high horse and saying, Fractal, yes, I gave you a gold award, but to be fair, peeps, only fucking just. And you need to just, the extra few millimeters, it's not a lot. I mean, maybe if you were a boy and you're talking to your girlfriend, that might make a bit of difference. But that much difference, it just opens up such a massive wide range of radiators. And if you want to say that your case is water cooling compatible, surely you don't want to be restricting people's options. So please, for the love of God, please just give us that extra few millimeters so that we can get those radiators in the roof. And so I know I ranted, but like I said, if I don't say it, no one else is going to pick up on this. And it would just, for those of us out there that are water coolers, are enthusiasts, you don't know, you might buy the case and then 6 months down the line you think to yourself, actually I'm fed up with my graphics cards being overheating, I want to put myself a CPU and a dual GPU loop in. And then you're going to be like, oh, because I bought this, I can't have that wicked bloody RX 360, or I can't put that all copper alpha cool UT60 up in the roof. And it just allows your customers to have more options. Once you get up to that point, people aren't going to moan that they can't put an 80mm thick radiator in, but 60mm, I kind of personally see a 60mm thick rad like this, I see that as normal. Anything smaller than that is skinny. So that's a normal radiator. A case should fit a normal radiator. Anyway, I'm stepping off of my soapbox, bonk bonk, and that's it. So if you don't want that radiator in the roof, it will serve you fine. It will tick you all the boxes. It's a great case. It's just a bit limiting when you do start to get down that water cooling end. So I'm sorry I have given it so much kind of hype, but like I said, it's because I'm a little bit more disappointed, because they made the Arc Midi V2 was a great case, and considering they've made it bigger, they only really needed to make it a little bit bigger and we wouldn't be having this conversation, and I'd be saying for 105 quid, it's the fucking, it's the best, one of the best water cooling cases out there at the moment, and I would be being that strong with it. But because of that oversight, I'm now just kind of saying, yeah, it fits XL-ATX boards, it's got some water cooling options, big radiators in the front, it's a bit limited in the roof. It's all right, because it's a big deal for me not being able to have those rads up there. But anyway, I know I am going round and round and round and round in circles. But so if you, what I will say is gold award if you air cooling, or you've got a skinny radiator, or it doesn't really bother you. But if you're looking at this for water cooling, I would be saying it's about a silver. So if you're looking at this because you want to, put big rads and stuff in, it's about a silver. You're going to have to rethink that your spec. I think that's about as nice as I can go with it. But for the overall award, whichever side I end up putting it, this side, that side, whatever, I'll be giving it a gold award. Like I said, just a bit disappointed. But now I know I've said disappointed and talked about radiators for so much. So I'm going to leave this. So you've got all your info. And I just want to be clear, if you are going to stick a H100 in this, or one of the NZXT coolers, or something like, or an air cooler, then you don't need to listen to anything that I've said about water cooling. You can just listen to the fact that it is a wicked case. It's very well made, it's good price, lovely big window, and I do like the smoke. Good air cooling options, because you can put plenty of fans in here. So that side of it is great. Only listen to my moaning about the water cooling if that's actually what you want it for. And if that is what you want it for, like I said, look at the XSPC AX360. That will be a good radiator for you for the roof. Alpha Cool also do the 45mm radiator. It will be tight, But one thing I will say is like your new girlfriend, she may get used to it eventually. You just may need to kind of go in slow to start off with, get it in there and get used to it before you start smashing it. Too far, Tom, too far, Tom. Right, so this is the end of it. That is it. Gold award. If you're really fussed about water cooling, maybe a silver. I'm not going to say any more on it, apart from this is Tiny Tom Logan with another video for you. Out.